Why does God allow evil people to be rich? It's actually a really simple answer, and I think the only surprising thing you're going to find in this video is how simple it really is. So let me just start you off with this. The underlying tone of the question suggests that it's inherently wrong to be rich. So I am going to answer this original question, but I'm going to add a follow-up to it because I think it might even be a little bit more important to answer this one. If so many rich people are evil, does that indeed mean it's wrong to be rich? And hello, my name is Ryan, and I talk about faith, finance, and business and how they relate to you, but that doesn't matter. Subscribe later if you want. You're here for some answers, so let's just start with that. Let's talk about it. The mistake we need to avoid, and we're going to start with the mistakes so that we can just get out of the way. The mistake that we need to avoid is assuming that because somebody is rich, that means they're blessed by God. The mistake is assuming that because somebody is famous, they're blessed by God. Because somebody has something that I don't, they must be blessed by God. That's the number one mistake that we need to avoid. Because let me read you something, and this will actually help answer the original question. In Ecclesiastes 2:26, it says, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and joy to those who please him. But if a sinner becomes wealthy, God takes the wealth away and gives it to those who please him. This, too, is meaningless like the wind. And that kind of sounds like a whole lot. Sometimes it sounds like a whole lot of nothing, but it means a lot. But what does it really mean? This is what we need to understand. Money will either empower you to live a good and happy life in the way that you can afford vacations, you can buy a home, you can feed your family, take care of yourself, a good and happy life, or it will enable you to live a distracted and meaningless life. And this passage talks about both. Living a good and happy life, being happy with your family and doing all these great things, or living a distracted and meaningless life. What does that part mean? That means you are chasing something that will never come with you to the grave. But notice one thing here. But if a sinner becomes wealthy, God is not giving the wealth to that sinner. This is telling us if a sinner happens to become wealthy, God takes it away eventually and gives it to the one who pleases him, the one who does good with it, right? So just because somebody is rich does not mean they're blessed by God. Just because somebody is famous or has something that you don't does not mean they're blessed by God. Why is it meaningless though? Because it's not coming with you to the grave. When you're in the ground, all of us will be eventually. What is your wealth doing? I mean something, but it's not with you, right? So it's meaningless. It's chasing the wind. You're chasing something that won't come with you. But why? That still doesn't answer the question, why does God allow evil people to rich? It answers what he's going to do with them, but it doesn't answer why. And what it all comes down to is freedom of choice. That's what it comes down to. Because it's important to remember that more than one God exists. And before you hate me in the comments, let me explain. Even God admits this himself. More than one God exists, but they're not all gods with a capital G, right? There is the God of abundance, which is the one and only true God. He's the true God. But then there's the God of lack, which is Satan, right? The world, fleshly desire, all these different things are idols. They're gods. But there's only one true God. So it all comes down to freedom of choice and who we want to serve. Because what kind of loving God would force you to love him back? Right? That's not a loving God. If he wanted that, he could have just created robots who did exactly what he said, whenever he said it, and exactly how he said it. And maybe life would have been simpler. But there's no love there. There's no choice. There's no love. It's freedom of choice. With that being said, if a sinner becomes wealthy, evil people are using God's principles to build wealth. God created the wealth. They're using the principles that he created to build wealth of their own to fight against God. Now, how much sense does that make? I don't know, but that's why God will take it away eventually. And what they're doing is they're using his principles to be fruitful and multiply. They're using his principles to pursue and push their own kingdom instead of his. They're pushing what they believe to be right and good for themselves instead of for anybody else or even for God. And the reason they're doing this is because their time is now. As Christians, as great men of God, women of God, our time is now, but it's also later. We have much more life to live, but they don't, and that's why they push it so hard, why they pursue something like wealth so relentlessly. Even though it means nothing, it's all they have. And I think we look at it too long like, man, or too wrong, like, well, they have everything. They have wealth. But I mean, I think we should be looking at, well, man, all they have is money. That's it. They hate their lives. What is financial freedom? What is freedom if you hate your life while you're living in a mansion? We see it all the time. It's really sad. All these celebrities, everybody thinks is happy. They have riches and fame, and everybody loves them, but then they hate themselves, and they end up, right? It's not a good thing. Oh, they have so much. They have everything. They have wealth. I see it as all they have is money. That's it. That's a sad life to live, and I prefer to look at it a little bit more of positive might not be the right word, but I look at it as in a different outlook. God is allowing them to keep their wealth for now because all they have is now. But there's two reasons why he's doing this, and this is what I believe it is. The first reason he's letting them keep their wealth for now is, one, it's a show of mercy, and two, it's an opportunity. So it's a show of mercy in the way that, well, I mean, he knows they cannot win in the end. They will not win in the end. It's out of pity. It's the same thing. Like, man, these people, they think they have so much, but they know they're headed to darkness. Let them have it for now. Let them take their win for now. It's like letting a child win a game just because you feel bad for them. They're not going to win in the end, but you're letting them feel happy for now because you know, well, maybe that might get a little bit dark, but they don't have anything else besides that. It's a show of mercy. It's pity. Let them enjoy their life for now because they're not going to have it later. But I think what makes that part make sense is the opportunity. And even in business, for us, we believe that all we can do is give people the opportunity. Even when we're talking about the gospel, right? We can't force somebody to do something, even though we believe it's good. All we can do is give them the opportunity. And I believe that's what God is doing. He's giving them the opportunity in the form of a test. They're given wealth, which takes a great responsibility, as a test. What are they going to do with it? Are they going to do something greater with it, or are they just going to keep doing the stupid crap that they've been doing? Right? It's a test. It's a test of responsibility, but it's a more than that. It's a chance to prove themselves. God, they can take this wealth. They can do whatever they want with it. And I'm going to give you an example from the Bible. They can do whatever they want with it. But that's what actually matters. It's not the wealth that they have that matters. It's what they do with the wealth that matters. And let me give you an example. This is probably the best example I can give you in King Solomon's story. And I'm going to talk about this one a little bit later as well. But in King Solomon's story, he's given wealth and riches and fame along with the wisdom that God gave him, right? But in the end, Solomon's life did not end so well, right? He used it so well, but if you read 1 Kings chapter 3 to chapter 10, you'll see every time Solomon did something or did something great or, something happened, he brought glory to God. He built a temple for God. He built all these different things for God. He built wealth and made so much money with the purpose of helping God's people. That's what it was for. But if you notice in the 11th chapter, the very next chapter, chapter 10 is literally just telling us how wealthy King Solomon was. Chapter 11 is telling us how Solomon fell so quickly, because here's what happened. Solomon used his wealth to do good and brought glory to God every time he did it, because he knew he couldn't have done it on his own without God's principles and without the purpose. But then he started to depend on his wealth and his riches instead of the God who gave him the wealth and the riches, right? It was a chance, it was an opportunity to prove himself. He was doing well, and then he failed it, right? It's a chance to do something greater. Not only that, not only for the person who is wealthy, it's also a chance for us good Christians to prove ourselves, right? And this one might you're gonna have to stick with me on this one, but here's what I mean. I'm gonna relate it to a story unrelated to the Bible, but I'll relate it back. Don't worry. I used to be a very big Disney and Marvel fan. Not so much anymore, but I used to be a very big fan. And one of my favorite characters in the Marvel universe is Loki. He's the god. He's the god of mischief, and he plays tricks on people, right? And he's the one who originally comes to Earth and tries to take over Earth. And here's why I'm bringing this up, because it's not just a chance for these wealthy, evil people to prove that they might do, or it's a chance for them to do something good with it. It's also a chance for us to rise up and do something good for ourselves. Because what happens in this storyline is Loki, he tries to invade Earth, but then the Avengers assemble, Earth's mightiest heroes, they assemble and stop it. They defeat him, whatever. But in the end, in the later series, we see Loki, he's looking at the entire timeline of the universe. How that's possible, don't worry about it, you're just going to have to watch it. But he's looking at the timeline of the entire universe, which is, as it's being explained to him, was predestined. It is how it is. He was destined to invade Earth and fail. That was his destiny, right? But the reason why is because the Earth needed the Avengers. But the Avengers never would have assembled if they weren't opposed by an enemy as big and great and dangerous as Loki. They were forced to rise to the occasion, right? They would not have assembled unless they had an enemy to fight against that was bigger and greater than they originally were individually, right? And maybe you're seeing where I'm going with this now. In the face of an enemy, you have two options. You can cower back and let them continue doing wrong, or you can rise up and get a good group of people together and learn and grow together and win it back, right? When God needed David, what did he do? He didn't give him a crown, he gave him Goliath, right? Because the greatest leaders, look at all the civil rights acts, right? Look at the greatest leaders of the world. We don't remember the ones who had no opposition. We only remember the ones who had greater oppositions and they rose to the occasion. That's what makes a great leader. They rise to the occasion. God didn't give David a crown. He gave him Goliath. That's when he rose up. That's really, not the start of his story, but that's what everybody remembers, right? And he was a man after God's own heart, but he had to be faced with an enemy first. And he wasn't necessarily bigger or wealthier or stronger or anything greater than Goliath, but one thing he did have was God, right? And I guess his little slingshot. But that's the point. He didn't have anything. Even if you don't have wealth, right, you don't have the riches, that doesn't mean you're powerless. Again, it does not mean just because you don't have wealth does not mean you're not blessed by God. Just because somebody does have wealth does not mean they are blessed by God, and vice versa, right? But let's answer that follow-up question, okay? Because why does God allow evil people to rich? For a variety of reasons. It's freedom of choice. It's mercy, but it's also an option for both them and for other people to rise up and to do something greater. But does that? That kind of answers it. But does that mean it's still inherently wrong to be rich if so many evil people are rich? Well, again, wealth is not an indication of blessing. But think about it like this. Just because you are wealthy does not mean you're blessed, but just because you're poor does not mean you're also not blessed, right? Let's talk about it like this, though. Just because you're poor doesn't make you automatically a good person. Just because you're rich doesn't automatically make you a bad person. I've gotten this question a lot. I even got this question 2 days ago, actually. Somebody asked me, well, they said this, I don't want to be rich. I just want to be able to pay my bills and take care of my family and go on vacations. And to me, I'm thinking like, well, sounds like you want to be rich. But I understood the intent behind it. They don't care necessarily about the money. They care about what the money can do for them, which is how it should be. But what I disagreed with was what they followed up with. I did point that out, and what they followed up with was, well, doesn't being rich just bring you more temptations? And maybe it brings you different temptations, but which temptations would you rather have? right? One person, the poor person, I mean, they'll make this excuse. Well, sometimes poor people steal because they can't afford to buy it themselves, right? That's a temptation. Let's talk about the rich person. Sometimes they're tempted to pay something, I don't know, literally anything. They do drugs, I don't know, because they can afford it now, right? But both temptations apply to both, right? It doesn't make a difference their wealth status. God does not care about your wealth status. It's irrelevant in his eyes. It's irrelevant. We forget that when we are in the kingdom of God and when we're in heaven, the streets are going to be made of gold. We're not going to be living in poverty. So is it wrong to be rich? Is it wrong to be wealthy? No. No, just it's not. Why would God have, if it is, here, answer these. If it is wrong, and I don't want to start arguing with you even though you haven't said anything yet, but if it is wrong, you're going to come across these questions. If it is wrong to be rich, if it is wrong to be wealthy, why would God have blessed Solomon with wealth? Is God wrong for doing that? Or why is God wrong for blessing Job after all his trials by doubling his wealth and his riches? Right? Is God wrong for doing that? Solomon, when he became wealthy, it was actually a direct result of his faith. In 1 Kings chapter 3, God came to him and said, ask me for anything and I will give it to you because of the faith of your father and the faith of you, I will give you whatever you want. Right? That's what he's telling him. Solomon asked for wisdom instead of wealth and fame, and so God said, because you didn't ask for wealth and fame, I'm going to give you the wisdom. But because you asked for these things in the name of my people, I'm going to give you all three. I'm going to give you wealth, I'm going to give you riches, I'm going to give you wisdom. Right? He gave him all three. It was a direct result of his faith. It cannot be wrong. Wealth was created with good intention, just like all these other things. People pervert the blessings of God and use it for their own good. Evil people use the principles of God and use it for their own good, for their own agenda. So yes, wealth can be used for wrong, but that doesn't make it wrong. That means the person who is using the wealth is wrong, right? But here's the bottom line. Wealth with a purpose is, in fact, a blessing, but wealth without a purpose is just a distraction. And if you don't believe me, to tie this up with the first passage that I read, Ecclesiastes 2 verse 26, a very similar one is in Proverbs 13:22. How do you give your wealth a purpose? You make sure and find a way that it lives beyond you. Your family, even when you pass away, your family's still going to be here. Your wealth still serves a purpose. And this, as crazy as it sounds, this comes down to very basic estate planning and making sure you have a budget, making sure you invest, making sure you have insurance. Proverbs 13:22 says, good people leave an inheritance to their children's children, but the sinner's wealth passes to the godly. Doing all those basic financial things that I just mentioned, most people think it's for the rich. Which if they think evil people are rich, they also think that's for the evil people, right? But this is directly telling us it's for the good people. It's for the godly people. Ecclesiastes said God takes the wealth away and gives it to those who please him. Proverbs 13:22 says, but the sinner's wealth passes to the godly. It's the same message. God did not give them their wealth. They use his principles to create their wealth and fund their own agenda. Eventually, God is going to take all those things, enough mercy, in the day of judgment, pass it to the godly. So is it wrong to be wealthy? Why does God allow evil people to be rich? For a variety of reasons that we just discussed. But is it wrong to be rich? Absolutely not. It depends on how you use it. Well, not absolutely not. It depends on how you use it. So this brings me to the sponsor of today's video, which is me. I'm sponsoring my own video. With all this information, if you just want to take it and run, do what you want to do, go for it, hit the subscribe button and just come back next video. But if you want to work with somebody, you don't want to do it on your own, feel free to check the links in my description and I'm more than happy to work with you. We'll pair you up with either me or somebody on my team and we'll get you with those fundamental, very practical steps to get your finances in order so that you can be ready for this great responsibility of wealth when it does come. For now, I will just see you in the next video.